I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost is with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this David French article because it got a lot of buzz over the weekend about James Talarico, and there's a lot of people who were criticizing David French, and David French was like, people criticizing me haven't even read it, and there are people who are definitely reading it. He just was choosing to overlook some really good commentary rebutting him. So I just thought we would go through it and talk about it. And James Talarico, I mentioned the other day that James Talarico, he is the candidate for Senate in Texas, and he is going to be someone who's talked about on a national scale, and you're just going to have to get used to hearing about him, unfortunately. Because they're trying to use him. The left is trying to use this figure to really bash Christianity and to bash Christians. And a lot of the attacks on Christian nationalism isn't even about attacking a bunch of really extreme weirdos. It's about attacking people who are just sincere in their faith, who want to be active in the political landscape, and to make those people ashamed to speak up and advocate for things that they believe in. Because while they bash people like Charlie Kirk, and CNN did their documentary on Christian nationalism and brought up Charlie Kirk and his assassination, his memorial, and all this stuff. Charlie Kirk didn't identify as a Christian nationalist himself. He did say, I'm a nationalist. He did say, I'm a Christian. But CNN decided to do a piece on him and Christian nationalism and stuff, and didn't, from my understanding, make the distinction that Charlie didn't identify that particular way. But to be fair, I guess the definition that they had, he did fit the definition. But Charlie noted that people would bring it up in a negative light when they would talk about that, because they want Christians to not be engaged in the political landscape. And that's really what a lot of this is about. So they'll condemn people like Charlie Kirk, but they'll cheer on Talarico, who will make a biblical case for abortion and have It's Time to Flip Tables on his website. And they're totally okay with him talking about his faith and pushing his faith to bash Christians, because he's the type of person that they want to uplift, because he shares their values. So I think people like him are pretty, unfortunately, dangerous, I guess. I find him to be really annoying. I do think there's a big concern. So that's why we got to address it. I don't think there's a huge risk about Texas turning blue, especially if information is properly put out there. If and I don't just mean people talking about it online. I mean, the Texas GOP needs to be putting out mailers, and the Senate race, I know they don't want to probably spend a lot of money on Texas, but they should put some funds there to just make sure that the people know that he is a radical person. He's trying to pretend to be more moderate. And I can cue up an example and show you guys after we read the article, because he's trying to say things like, oh, well, if you're a Christian and if you're pro-life, you can still be in the Democrat Party because we can still do things to reduce abortion. I'm like, sir, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, did you not try to get Joe Biden to use federal lands to keep abortion going in red states? So don't give me that crap about how you want less abortion when you are literally trying to make sure it is readily available in red states if the people so choose to not have abortion in that state. So this guy is so gross. He's so insincere. And of course, I hate how he just abuses and twists and lies on scripture. So David French did an article about him, and so we're going to talk about it. And David French, he's been writing for lefties for a minute. He says he's a conservative. But I think, like a lot of never Trumpers, they like Bill Kristol, who used to espouse like right wing sort of principles, they had to abandon all that stuff so they could, one, keep their left wing audience happy, because if you're bashing Trump, you're not just you're upsetting people on the right, and so who's your bread and your butter? It's going to be leftists. So you can't espouse all these great conservative values and tick off your base. You have to find a way to have this snooty attitude, like, oh, well, I'm a person on the right and I don't like what they're doing, and we should be able to call out people on our own side, and I have to keep calling out people on my own side. And a lot of times these people end up betraying a lot of the things that they claim to have believed in and want to have upheld, and so on. So David French has had some really off takes. Bill Kristol he has a website, The Bulwark. But there's a lot of folks who are never Trumpers who just lost their way. If you want to criticize Trump, that's fine. But obviously he does things that are good, and obviously he does things that are not good. And you can be fair and call out both, but not allow the brain rot to set in. But you get so used to advocating and pitching stuff to a particular audience, that and your donor list becomes, a particular type of way, and you just eventually don't want to upset the apple cart. But maybe some of it is genuine brain rot and not just ingenuine behavior. But before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktunes.com, check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. Like I mentioned an article the other day during a TikTok, because someone had it was a paramedic who had tried to make the case that abortion isn't violent. I'm like, it seems pretty violent when you look at the actual procedures and what's done to the fetus. But try to say like, no, because it's medical and you need consent. And tried to basically use a thesis for the In Defense of Abortion essay. He didn't mention the essay, but that the thesis is that no one can use your body without your consent to live, even if they're going to die, which is just cap. And there's plenty of examples, like parents can't just neglect their children and choose to not use their bodies to take care of them. If the child is going to die, you will go to jail for those kinds of things. That there's vaccine laws. We all lived through 2020, which is wild to me that people just immediately got back on the train of full bodily autonomy with abortion, even though people wanted to dictate how many people could be in your house. And people you had to like have their vaccine cards and passports and all kinds of weird stuff during that time. And it just floors me. How people just want to quickly forget about that. I can't forget about that. It was too stupid of a time to just forget about all that stuff. But anyway, I have an article that debunks In Defense of Abortion essay. So that's on my website and other stuff as well. So you guys can check out stuff on my website. If you like what I do here, you guys can leave a donation, because it does cost to stream and run my website, all that stuff. You guys can support. I very much appreciate it, and appreciate you guys. I guess March is reading month, so I do want to encourage you guys to also check out some different books that I have bigger behind me, and other stuff. And I'm just steadily typing away on lots of different things. I will be at Motor City Comic-Con. That is official in May. So if you're in Michigan, or you're traveling, a lot of people travel. It's a pretty good Comic-Con. To Motor City Comic-Con, I will have a table, and I will. Oh, you bought bigger. Did you buy it from Amazon? I don't remember. But check my website. Thank you. I see someone bought bigger. Thank you very much. So I'm excited about that. Amazon. Yep. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoy it. Because I'm like, I don't remember that alert from the website. So yeah, you guys can pick up bigger. There's a link in my website if you want to, order it from there and get a signed copy and stuff. You guys can get it from Amazon. You can get it hardcover. You guys can get it paperback. You guys can get it ebook if you would like to read that way. Though I know people read them on their phones like that. I read through a book with my niece on my phone with like Kindle, and it was a little weird. So I don't know. I would rather have a kid's book like in my hand, but I want to encourage you guys to get that and other stuff. I'm still writing and working on books. I'm also going to be at the Big Ohio Book Con. That's in June. I think it's like the 8th. So I know it's around my birthday. My birthday's the 10th, and I know it's before. So I think it's around the 8th. So I'll be there. And I know there is a West Bloomfield. Nope. Nope, that's something else. Look at my emails. I know I have a book fair thing that's local that I have very soon. I think not this Sunday, but the next Sunday. And it's like West Bloomfield or Bloomfield. It's at the library or something. I'll have to let you guys know. I don't, it's local. So I got a couple things popping up. Anyway, very, very excited for the rest of the year. So let's go ahead and jump into all this stuff. Got it for a 3-year-old's birthday party. I hope they like it. I hope she loves it. I hope she loves it. Anyway, let's jump into this article with David French. I'm just going to read it from my phone if you do not mind. These days, I'm asking, well, let me read the actual title. James Talarico is a Christian X-ray. That is the name of the article. It's in the New York Times. Opinion piece by David French. These days, I'm asked more about James Talarico than I'm asked about any politician not named Donald Trump. Talarico is a 36-year-old Texas state representative and the Democratic Party's latest and greatest hope for winning its first statewide election there in more than 30 years. They thought that about Beto too, bro. He's also one of the most faith-forward politicians in the United States. Talarico doesn't just root his policies and ideology in his Christian beliefs. He's a seminarian willing to dive deep into theology. When he's arguing with the religious right about, say, Christian nationalism, he makes a specifically Christian argument to counter a poisonous Christian movement. Jesus liberates, Talarico said in a sermon in 2023. Christian nationalism controls. Jesus saves. Christian nationalism kills. Jesus started a universal movement based on a mutual love. Christian nationalism is a sectarian movement based on mutual hate. So, already triggered. So I'm sure people are asking David French about it because the primary in Texas is going on. There was a whole Colbert scandal where they claimed that the FCC didn't want it to air his interview with Colbert, which really the lawyers at CBS were like, oh, there's an election going on. There's equal time. Just on the safe side, you could have Jasmine Crockett, who he was running against, also on the show for equal time and I don't even think the equal time needs to be like precisely on the same show. I think the network just has to give the candidate some kind of equal time. But they didn't want to give her equal time, and she's been on the show quite a bit. So instead, they just put it on YouTube and then tweeting like, oh, the Trump administration doesn't want you to see this. They tried to stop us and shut us down and did this big hoax. He raised over $2 million in a few days, and maybe I think 48 hours. He got a lot more, hype from that. But he's been on a lot of national media. He was interviewed by Ezra Klein on his podcast. He was on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is the biggest podcast in the world. And Joe Rogan, I guess I liked a lot of the stuff that he said. he said a lot of crazy stuff on that Joe Rogan podcast. A lot of people have pushed back on him, and also his Ezra Klein interview. Anytime he really speaks and people pounce because it says a lot of theological things that just aren't accurate. So yeah, he's the hot talk of the town, really because of how people are elevating him, especially in the media, but on the political left. And what's really annoying and warrants the correction is people keep hyping up this guy as if he is the real example of how Christians should be and how Christian politicians should behave. There are atheists who keep saying things like, this is the most Christian politician I've ever seen. And I'm like, I wonder why you think that. Because you have itching ears and he's scratching them. But that doesn't mean what he's saying is correct. Why are so many demons happy when Talarico is speaking? let's ask ourselves these questions. Why aren't their demons triggered? Why aren't they triggered when Talarico is speaking? Okay. But even say this stuff that David French was quoting about how he's criticizing Christian nationalism, about how it controls and how it kills. This man tries to use the Bible to justify abortion, to literally murder babies, to literally murder babies. Whose ideology is killing who? Who? There are some weirdo, hateful people who claim to be Christian nationalists. Absolutely. And what's annoying about all this stuff is instead of trying to, I don't know, beam righteous fury with a magnifying glass on these particular people who are pretty bad and hateful, they're trying to paint with this really broad brush. And it ends up getting people like Charlie Kirk, for example. When he's no longer with us, but CNN just did the special about Christian nationalism, and Charlie Kirk was a topic, and he's not the only person. You don't think they they would lump me and other folks like you in this particular category? Because CNN, their category, again, Charlie Kirk didn't identify as a Christian nationalist, but their argument was just like basically two qualifications: is that you believe that America's a Christian nation, was founded as a Christian nation, and that's either a point of fact for you or it's not. Whether you believe it was literally founded to be a Christian nation, you could make the argument that it was obviously founded on a Christian principles and ideas, and much of the West is. So you could go that route, but I think the most important thing that they're really concerned about is that they advocate for Christian ethics and ideals and stuff to be implemented in policy. Now, there's plenty of people who I think identify as Christian nationalism who don't want a straight up theocracy to take place. But if you're a Christian, why wouldn't you want Christian ideals to be pushed in society? They're good ideals, they're good ethics, they're good morals. And you don't have to make the argument of, hey, God said to do this thing, therefore we want you to make that a law. That's not how I see Christians advocate, really, for any policy. The only thing I can really think of is maybe gay marriage. But I don't think people really made such unsophisticated arguments, I guess, and for a very long time, to be frank. If people say, I don't like abortion, it's about, hey, well, you are taking the life of the preborn, and they may mention that the preborn are made in the image of God, but they are literally living human beings. Like, you're making a belief claim yourself about them not being valuable, and making belief claims about why you want to disqualify them from a right to life, which is a right to not be killed, which should be an inalienable right. So we're clashing with our beliefs there, and whether you ascribe that to secularism or you want to twist the Bible into some kind of way yourself to justify your belief in abortion, Um, I got a lot of different ways I could come at you and say abortion is wrong and we should stop this. But from a personal religious standpoint, I obviously want to do justice and love mercy. And I recognize the preborn as image bearers of God and also my neighbor. And I don't want them to be killed. So I do have a lot of ethics, religious ethics driving a lot of stuff. But if I said, hey, I don't think murdering pregnant women should be a thing, are we going to be like, no, you just saying that because you're Christian? No, it's a good rule to live by. It's a good thing to push. It's a good thing to implement. Like, okay. So, it's just very hypocritical the way that people want to stop believers from standing up for things that they believe in just because they're rooted in the gospel. But again, Talarico, he may say that Christian nationalism kills when he himself is advocating for policies that he believes in, that he believes are Christian ethics. He's wrong about the approaches and a lot of things that he believes in, but he believes that they're Christian and he's advocating for them. How is he not a Christian nationalism, just kind of by the broad definition? I don't know if he probably wouldn't make the claim that America is a Christian, is founded on Christianity or founded to be a Christian nation. He probably wouldn't say that. But the most important thing is the fact that there's the advocacy for Christian ideals. So one way or another, how is he not like the people that he's criticizing? Except he's actually advocating for policies that are straight up murder. So there's that. We'll keep reading. The same thing applies to discussions about specific government policies. Just as Christian conservatives often root their arguments about immigration and abortion in scripture, so does Talarico. Do you hear many Christians root conversations about immigration on the Bible? Do you hear many Christians or people who are against open borders say, we need to close the borders because of Jesus? Is that what we do? Is that what we do? Or do we say, hey, you should respect our laws. We need to know who's coming over into our country. We don't need to have terrorists hopping the borders. We don't need people taking up all of our resources. We don't need people skipping the line. There are people who come in here and immigrate the right way. Sometimes it takes years. They study. They take the citizenship test. They come in with sometimes no money, but they're no burden on the system. They don't get in trouble. They're on the very best behavior. And then they end up becoming a citizen, and they're the most patriotic people that you will find. I want to respect those people, and I don't want someone from the Middle East coming up through the southern border and just kind of staying, wherever, and then getting funds off of government dime. I don't want that to happen. There's already so many people in this country. We need to know who's coming, and we can have immigration, but it needs to be controlled. We don't need an invasion at the border. American citizens are expected to follow the laws, and if they don't follow the laws, there are repercussions. So if these people come in and they break our laws, they need to face repercussions, which is usually you get a flight back home, which isn't actually that mean when you think about it. But there are people who are coming over here illegally who have committed even more heinous crimes while being here. And some of them have committed heinous crimes in their country of origin. And we may not know that. But we don't need those people over here creating more hazardous situations for the citizens of the United States of America. And we definitely don't need people who can barely read road signs driving, and people who aren't American citizens trying to vote, and people who aren't properly immigrating into the country. That we don't need that. Did I say a scripture there, folks? we don't use the Bible to say, hey, you can't come into their country illegally. Now, people might mention, hey, we're supposed to obey the laws of the land and quote like Romans 13 or something. I have seen Christians do that. But usually when Christians do that, it's in retaliation to leftists saying, hey, we got to be nice to the stranger. We got to care for the stranger. Jesus was an illegal alien refugee from Sudan or whatever. Crazy stuff that people say, you know, like when people try to use religion to guilt us, we have to come back and correct their abuse of scripture. I can't think of Christians out the blue that are just like, yes, we need to protect the border because of Jesus. That's not how we operate. It's already so stupid. We are not that far in. This article. It's not like too insanely long though, but it's so stupid. And of course the abortion, the Bible is blatantly against abortion, as you can see over there. But for example, in an interview with my colleague Ezra Klein, Talarico criticized the evangelical focus on abortion and homosexuality in politics. It's remarkable to me, Talarico said, that you have an entire political movement using Christianity to prioritize two issues that Jesus never talked about. So we've talked about Talarico saying that, again, Jesus didn't talk about... I can't run over Talarico with my car, but obviously we know enough from the Bible and the teachings of Jesus to know, hey, that's not going to fly, and that's not cool to do, and it's wrong. Also, when it comes to homosexuality, Jesus did very much reference, because he had said gay marriage in another conversation. He might have said gay marriage in this one. Jesus did talk about marriage, and he did reference back to Genesis, where it says a man and a woman will come together and become one flesh. So that's what marriage is. It's not two dudes. It's not two females. It's not any other kind of the six sexes that Talarico thinks exist. It's a man and a woman coming together to become one flesh. So there's no gay marriage in the Bible because there's no such thing from a Christian perspective. So there's that. But the Bible certainly talks about homosexuality, very much so. And even Jesus referencing adultery talks about sexual immorality. When you go back to, like, they use the term pornea, when you go back to the Old Testament, talking about where they talk about sexual immorality, you will find homosexuality in there. And I don't like this thing where people try to say, well, did Jesus specifically talk about it? Do you not believe in the whole Bible? Do you not believe that Jesus is God? You believe we're somehow disconnected or in an argument, or they're two different operators of, because it's just not how it works. So I don't like that argument either, which I usually just see left-wing people making that argument, and usually about homosexuality, I guess. And so he continued, I'm not saying that they're not important. I actually think both these issues are very important, but to focus on those two things instead of feeding the hungry and healing the sick and welcoming the stranger, three things that we're told to do ad nauseum in scripture, to me is just mind-blowing. Christians do these things. There was a video I saw on TikTok a couple weeks ago, and there was someone who was on they're in the book talk kind of algorithm, and they were so annoyed because people were mad about their politics, and because they wanted a bunch of different people on book talk to come out and condemn ICE and a bunch of other stuff, and they weren't going to do that. And so people started saying that she was a fascist and all kinds of different stuff. And she's like, okay, I actually run a charity and have run charities that help refugees. And And she talked about how much work that she put in and how hard it is to get help and funding and all kinds of different stuff from I think mentioned from the left and stuff. But this is someone who's personally invested in actually trying to help people, but still wants, borders and respects law enforcement. But people don't understand that people with their own free will and not using the arm of the government can care for widows and orphans and the poor, the needy, the hungry, all those folks. Like Rand Paul's like, I don't support universal health care. You shouldn't be making doctors do stuff. I'm not a slave. I'm a physician, blah, blah, blah. But in his personal conviction, will do things for the needy and people who are impoverished and do surgeries and eye exams and all kinds of different things for those folks, because that is his actual Christian conviction. You trying to confiscate money or coerce me into doing things is not charitable. You trying to force the government to do your religion so you don't have to do it, it just makes you not really a Christian. Well, you're not doing anything. You're not doing the Christian ethic if you're not doing it yourself, if you're trying to outsource it to the government. So when it comes to particular policies, like, oh, they're not feeding the hungry. Sure we are. Sure we are. There are churches that do all those kinds of different things. This past weekend, you guys know that my church, when we're a small church, very small church, but we put on a event to raise money. It was a very nice event to raise money for a pregnancy crisis center. Which, by the way, James Talarico, I don't know if he's attacked pregnancy crisis centers, but a lot of people on the left have, because a lot of people don't actually want there to be less abortions. So there's always a lot of accusation from what the people on the right aren't doing, what Christians aren't doing. It's just that we actually believe in doing our own charity, because again, when you confiscate other people's money, especially people already strapped up hard for cash, and you're doing so much spending. We already spend so much money on the welfare state, and we're in debt. Our children, our grandchildren are in debt. We're not being good stewards of what we have right now. And if we don't vote for more spending, which much of it will be wasted, let's just be frank, they try to act like we're bad Christians. Like Talarico, for example, and I've played this clip before, he was on a news program and he said, oh, well, Jesus, more than he taught, more than he preached, he healed people. And these Republicans, they want to not do such and such on healthcare. And I'm like, first of all, that's not true. He obviously taught and preached a lot. The scriptures on healing will be like yay big, a couple sentences or whatever, or paragraph or whatever. And you'll have like just chapters of different teaching and parables and things like that. And the miracles are obviously meant to affirm who he is. So you're kind of missing the point anyway, Talarico. And we're also talking about supernatural things that Jesus was doing. They still have physicians during that time, FYI. You can go pray for people at the hospital right now, and that's stopping you from doing that. But that is very different than you, again, voting to confiscate other people's money to force them to pay for people's health care, etc. Is not the same. When I hear Talarico speak about faith, I alternate between agreement and disagreement. He's spot on about dangers of Christian nationalism, and yet I can't help but respond to his arguments about the relative priority of abortion by asking, why can't we do it all? Provide high quality health care, welcome immigrants, and protect the unborn. They got to be legal immigrants, sir. And that's hardly the only disagreement, theological or ideological, between us. But those disagreements are to be expected. Talarico is a political and religious progressive. I'm a political and religious conservative. Sure you are, French. But focusing on those disagreements misses the reason I'm asked about him so much. Talarico isn't just making arguments. He's giving people hope. And I think I know why. giving people hope, because one, people really want Texas to go blue and they want to stop Republicans so they can do stuff like kill more babies. But well, let me read what French said. Put simply, if the primary American divide is between right and left, then Talarico isn't that interesting. There's a long history of progressive religious activism in the United States, just as there's a long history of conservative religious activism. White evangelicals might be overwhelmingly Republican, but American Christians are remarkably diverse politically, and we've been arguing with one another for a long time. Yet, if the primary American divide is between decent and indecent, and this is why people was getting ticked off about this stuff, then equation changes. Talarico shines. It's not decent to advocate to kill babies. That's not a decent thing to do. It's not decent to malign your political opponents and misrepresent what they believe, what they say, where they stand. And that's the kind of person he is. It's not decent to create an elaborate ruse with Colbert to get the best of Jasmine Crockett, and so you can raise millions of dollars. It's not decent to lie about what the scriptures say and to twist them for your own political goals and achievements. That's not decent. That's not decent. This is why people are actually really annoyed with David French's article here. Or to put it another way, Talarico is one of the few openly Christian politicians in the United States who acts like a Christian. What the heck is that supposed to, I guess he's going to say. And by acting like a Christian, he reveals a profound contrast with so many members of the MAGA Christian movement that's dominated American political life for 10 years. For too long, we've evaluated Christians in politics primarily through their policy positions. Are you pro-life or pro-choice? Because they're politicians and we want them to enact policy. I do very much care about their personal lives, and I want our politicians to be moral and upright, and I would like that. There was a politician, and I had heard something about their marriage life and other things like that. I'm like, oh gosh, I don't like that at all. And someone was like, unfortunately, that is just the case for like so many of these people. And I don't like that. I don't like people being unfaithful to their wives. I don't like people. I don't like people divorcing and things like that. But sometimes people, situations are dire, but with abuse and things like that. But I don't like people going out and fornicating. There's lots of things I don't like. When Donald Trump, which I'm sure he'll probably get to, back in 2016, what really bothered me is I'm like, I would question people. I'm like, okay, what are you like? Like, are you moral? Are you upright? You're judging this man. I'm like, well, he's the president. I'm like, okay, but this is a problem. And like, I know you want your leaders to be shining examples, but they also represent the people, right? If we were a more moral and upright people, I think our politicians would have to be more upright and moral. But people kind of, I don't know, they can shrug their shoulders at a lot of things because they themselves aren't great. Like, people would be so mad about different things that Donald Trump said about like Rosie O'Donnell and other women and stuff. And one of the things, I don't know if you guys remember, was that very close to the election on Twitter, this was before Elon Musk bought it and was actually named Twitter, they like bought out all this ad space on Twitter. So there's like these kind of naked images of people's bodies. And it was just like Trump's words, like body shaming all these women and other things like that to just, and I'm like, I don't want to see this much or whatever, but like it's just a little too much skin or whatever. But there were people who had a naked image of Donald Trump that they were taking around the country. It was like a paper mache Donald Trump that was just naked to embarrass him. And I'm like, this is gross. This is disgusting. You guys hate this guy for being a pig. Why are you acting like a pig? And I know you see this as retaliation, but why don't you try to live up to a better ethic? You're mad at this guy for being crass, for being crude, for being disgusting or whatever. Why are you doing these things? Because I could say, hey, I would love to have a politician that is a goody two shoes. You know? I would love that. I would love if there was a lot of politicians who shared my morals, shared my beliefs, and actually decided to live out that way. I would love that. But a lot of people who condemn these politicians, they're like, they themselves are a hot mess, you know? So I think a lot of people have just come to accept that, hey, just a lot of people are hot messes. As long as with Bill Clinton, they're like, it's the economy, stupid. Like, as long as the economy's fine, that's okay. And with Donald Trump, they're like, I don't need a repairman. You know, if a repairman is coming in to fix my sink or something, I don't need to know their love life and blah, blah, blah. I just need to know that they're qualified to do the job and they can stop the leak. Like that's how people, you know, rationalize voting for Donald Trump, you know? But I just really hated it back then because I'm like, they're trying to punk Christians out of voting for him because he may be this really imperfect person. But the other option is Hillary Clinton, who was married to someone who's obviously not great, and she's not great either. She was the one. There's this whole kind of elaborate disinformation campaign to attack Bill Clinton's accusers and other things like that. And she was a part of that. They called it vast right-wing conspiracy theory, and it wasn't a conspiracy theory. And, you know, she's all a part of that kind of stuff. And, but Hillary Clinton believed in some really evil things. So they're on a debate stage and Donald Trump is like, yeah, we shouldn't be able to rip babies apart in like the 8th month or like really late and do late term abortions, because there's a conversation about partial birth abortion. And Hillary Clinton was on the stage and defended it. And Trump was just like, I don't think we should rip the babies apart. And I'm like, okay, this guy's had 3 wives. I'm not cool with that, you know. But she is talking about ripping a baby apart. So when people think of these figures, they may not have it all together, but at the same time, you want them to go in office and implement policies that you like. And if you trust that they're going to do that, why wouldn't you vote for that person? I think it would be great if you could have moral, upright people who are going to go in and just, you know, do a great job as far as getting the legislation passed and so on. But if it's between someone who's seems maybe just a bit less evil as far as maybe their personal life, which by the way, Hillary Clinton, you know, there's all kind of crazy stuff during the 2016 campaign, like when she was a lawyer and there was this little girl who got raped and Hillary Clinton represented the rapist. And she wasn't the public defender, from my understanding. So I don't know why she particularly took that case, other than I heard that they wanted a female to do it because they were going to bash a little girl who was so brutally raped that she could never, you know, have children or anything like that. So there's just all kinds of things to criticize Hillary Clinton on. But she was on The View and said, you know, defended the idea that children, even hours before their due date, don't have any rights, so she could defend abortion. She was just so extreme on the issue. So if you got Donald Trump, yeah, again, yes, he's had 3 wives, but at least he's not saying it should be okay legally to kill babies hours before their due date. Like, so what are we supposed to do? In situations like that, be like, nah, he said grab him by the you know what, so I gotta vote for the person who wants to rip babies apart. It's come on. So yeah, we do ask about questions about abortion. Are you pro-life or pro-choice? Do you support same-sex marriage? What's your position on immigration enforcement? Yet this is exactly backward. What the heck? Wait, immigration is pro-life, pro-choice, people consider those social issues. Same-sex stuff, people would consider those social issues, though they do have huge implications about the country and so on. But immigration, I don't even feel like those three things should be in the same. That's a really important thing that really everybody on both sides of the aisle should be on the same page about. No, you should. This is such a crazy sentence. Let me go back. For a long time, we've evaluated Christians in politics primarily through their policy positions. You do evaluate politicians by their policy positions, do you not? Do you not? Are you pro-life or pro-choice? Do you support same-sex marriage? What's your position on immigration enforcement? Yet this is exactly backward. If you were to crack open scripture today and start reading, one of the first things you should notice is that the Bible contains remarkably few political mandates. You can read it from cover to cover and not know the definitive biblical tax rate, welfare program, or foreign policy. That's really strange because Talarico seems to think that there's quite a bit of political mandates and things like that in the Bible. I disagree with this too. And there's obviously a lot of political mandates, particularly in the Old Testament, because you're dealing with a religious theocracy with the Israelites. So and also the Christians were dealing a lot with a lot of persecution and injustice with the Roman occupation, and they were urged to, basically not do anything crazy. Not to lead rebellions and things like that, and to be, so you have to read. The Bible is for you, but it's also not to you. So you have to also think about particular times that, that they're in. But when people bring up the Bible to bash immigration, you can still get particular ideas about, hey, yeah, governments can institute laws. You should obey the laws of the land. And by the way, borders were a thing and a common sense thing in the Bible. And if you're going on social issues, you can definitely mandate things socially. So I don't even understand. And even him saying the welfare program, like Christians, there's not a political mandate there, but there is a mandate for people to care for widows and orphans and things like that. Even in the Second Timothy, I think it's First Timothy. When there's the love of money is the root of all kinds of evils that Talarico had misquoted, because he just said money is the root of all evil. That's not what it teaches. That verse and chapter actually teaches that Christians, that Paul was telling Timothy that there are people who will abuse the gospel for financial gain and things like that. So I would say Talarico actually fits in that. And to be careful about people like them. And it goes on to talk about how you should teach the rich and how you should teach them not to be haughty and to care for the poor and things like that. Not that they have to not exist or things like that. So there's a lot of ideals about life and policy and things that we can obviously take from the Bible. Let's next paragraph. But the next thing you'll notice is that there is an immense amount of guidance in describing how Christians should, behave. Indeed, the book of Galatians, Apostle Paul says that the fruit of the Spirit is set of virtues, joy, love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Absent from the list is a single theological or ideological proposition. That's not to say that that theology or ideology is unimportant. It does really matter whether a politician is pro-life or pro-choice. But there is no spiritual or political scenario where you can abandon Christian virtue for the sake of alleged greater good. And if a Christian politician abandons Christian virtue, then Christian believers should abandon him or her. I'm reminded of three related concepts: orthodoxy, orthopraxy, and orthocadia. The first two words might be familiar to some of you. Certainly, the first one will be. Orthodoxy is a term for the traditional beliefs in any given religious tradition. Orthopraxy refers to righteous conduct. The final word, however, is arguably the most important, even if it is easily the most obscure. I first heard orthocardia in a Sunday school lesson taught by Josh Strahan, a professor of biblical interpretation in the New Testament at Lipscomb University, where I teach. Orthocardia means what it sounds like, having a right heart. In essence, it means that our beliefs and behaviors flow from our heart, and that a right posture toward God and man both makes us eager to learn God's truth, driving us toward orthodoxy, and eager to love our neighbor, pointing us through orthopraxy. Or as Jesus said, the good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure produces evil, for out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks. For example, when Talarico won his Senate primary, he said, "I am tired of being pitted against my neighbor." Really, he seems very adversarial, actually, and very naggy, I guess. "I'm tired of being told to hate my neighbor. It's been more than 10 years of this kind of politics as a blood sport, politics as trolling or owning, politics as a total war. It tears families apart. It ends friendships. It leaves us all feeling terrible all the time." So he's playing for the general, obviously, here. "I know there are people who register those words deeply. They've endured a fractured friendships. They've seen their own families fall to pieces. And the idea that a politician might actually run a race without rancor and hatred can feel intoxicating, even if you have theological or ideological disagreements with them. To be clear, the answer to hate and division isn't just becoming more mild-mannered and milquetoast. It's a combination of conviction and compassion, and that's imperative for Christian politicians. I also know that Talarico won't win over many truly conservative voters. He's far too progressive. But there are legions of wary Americans who aren't motivated primarily by ideology, and those are exactly the people who talk to me about Talarico. One reason politics has been so exhausting and even so frightening is that we often know that opposing politicians don't just disagree with us, but they hate us." That's a thing on the left, man. I mean, I'm not going to say there's not some people on the right, but the feeling of you don't agree with me, therefore we hate you, that is very much a left-wing thing. Very much a left-wing thing. And if politicians... And Talarico, you can't call yourself a child of God if you're polluting with greenhouse gases. Like, come on. He's what he claims to hate. And if politicians hate us, then we know they won't listen to us, they won't care about us, and they may well actively try to harm us when they're in office. This is what MAGA Christianity has become. It's MAGA Christianity, not just left wing. Okay. In a world, cruelty is the name of Trumpism, is no vice, and kindness is the name of progressivism, is no virtue. There is no better representation of that reality than one of Talarico's potential general election opponents, Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas. The man is an admitted adulterer, which is something that used to matter to conservative Christians. His wife, a conservative state senator, has filed for divorce on biblical grounds. Paxton tried to help Trump steal the 2020 election, and he's so corrupt that several of his top aides blew the whistle on him and resigned or were removed from their jobs, with many of them claiming he provided favors for a donor in exchange for personal benefits, including finding employment for the woman said to be his mistress. Paxton has denied wrongdoing. He was impeached by the Republican-controlled House, only be acquitted in the Texas Senate, and yet Paxton wins. If Paxton wins, because they got to do a runoff, MAGA evangelicals will no doubt claim that he is the only viable candidate for Christians to support. After all, it's a common sentiment on the right that you can't be a Christian and vote for Democrats. people do say that. I don't love that, by the way. Fortunately, however, there are signs in Texas that voters of both parties are turning toward virtue. Senator John Cornyn, the incumbent Republican, won a surprising though narrow plurality over Paxton in the first round of Texas primary voting. Cornyn ran on a campaign centered on character, unusual in today's Republican Party. As my colleague Michelle Cottle wrote, Cornyn couldn't be more clear. Ken Paxton is betting that character doesn't matter to Texas Republican primary voters. I'm betting the opposite. I'm betting character still matters. At the same time, Cornyn's ultimate prospects may hinge on whether the lowest character politician in America endorses him. Trump has stayed out of the race so far, but he's reportedly set to endorse Cornyn for instrumental reasons. Cornyn has far better chance in keeping Texas red than Paxton. We know that Trump era will end. By the way, I don't know if he's endorsed at some point at this point now, but I said I didn't think he should really endorse. I think you can have a behind the scenes conversation with both of them and say, hey, let's not do the infighting and do the runoff. And it will really be best for the party if you step down. And, I appreciate if you did that and not just make a decision and like bully pulpit from Truth Social. I don't think that should be the thing. We know that Trump era will end. We don't know how. Political scientists speak of the American electorate as thermomastic, often reacting against the party in power. There are different ways this can work. The public can certainly react against the ruling party's ideology by swinging right or left in response. But what if the coming thermomastic reaction isn't about ideology as much as character and temperament? What if we're seeing a 21st century version of the American public's movement away from cruelty and corruption in Richard Nixon toward the ethics and integrity of Jimmy Carter, a man who won for all the right reasons in 1976, even though his presidency didn't live up to his promise? Yeah. Does that seem like a route to go on? Jimmy Carter was a good dude. Okay. It's too soon to be that optimistic. I wouldn't be optimistic about going back to Carter, man. But that's what I see in people's attitudes toward Talarico. That's what I see in Cornyn's surprising plurality over Paxton. This miserable political movement won't end when the left takes back the government from the right or if the right continues to beat the left. It will end when our politicians, especially Christian politicians, forsake cruelty for compassion and realize that we shall know Christians in politics, not by their stridency and ideology, but by their integrity and love, including their love for, as Talarico put it, all of their neighbors. Oh, but not the children that you want to murder, bruh. That's the significance of Talarico movement, not the old news that a Christian can be progressive, but rather a Christian politician can actually act like Christians. Kindness still has a place in the public square, even if that doesn't always seem that way. So I guess when you say someone is acting like a Christian, I know there's particular fruits of the Spirit. And one of those fruits of the Spirit, you're not supposed to like rejoice if you love your neighbor, for example, which Talarico keeps talking about. Would you rejoice in wrongdoing? So I bring up the scripture a lot when it comes to like just accept love, etc. I'm like, okay, if I love my neighbor, why would I want them to walk in sin? Like, why would I rejoice in them walking in sin? Like, let me at least say how things are supposed to be. Hopefully you receive it. I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to treat you like a human being, like you're made in the image of God. And like God loves you because he does. But do I believe that a man and a man are supposed to get married? No. Do I believe that they should be buying a woman's womb or renting a womb and getting an egg so they can, make a baby and construct a life where she lives a motherless life? No, I don't support that. And I'm going to speak out against that because it is not right. I'm not going to rejoice in something that is wrong. And so Talarico believes and pushes a lot of very wrong ideology, bad ideology, and he misrepresents, lies about the Bible. And not only that, pushes things like the Gospel of Thomas things that are heretical, to push other ideology as well. I don't think when people say, hey, we want to protect girls' sports, we don't want boys in girls' bathrooms, we don't want locker rooms and stuff, and he's like, you're picking on these poor trans kids, how dare you, choosing to ignore all the women who have been wronged, you have a skewed sense of justice. And I think you are not actually operating as a proper Christian if your sense of justice is that particularly screwed. Now I just take issue with this idea of like, oh well, Talarico's a X-ray. We may disagree on policy, but he's showing people how Christians should really act. There's people who are, Jesus talked about how people can love the people who are on the same team as them, and that's not a big deal, right? Like even unbelievers can do that. But when you love your enemies, like I saw Christians after Charlie was killed were quoting that passage, and people were getting mad at Christians for quoting that passage because like, no, you don't understand what he's done. You don't understand all the things that he said and what he believes and what he pushes, blah, blah, blah. Don't tell us not to be angry and to love somebody who you hated. Just being nice. First, niceness and kindness aren't the same things. You can be kind and still very much offend people because you speak the truth. If you're being nice to people to not upset the apple cart, and you can be so nice to them that you're baby talking them off of a cliff, that's not right. That's not moral. That's not good. And then I'm confused on how you can act like a Christian and then espouse theology that's not Christian, when you can get up on the Ezra Klein show and talk about how all these other paths lead to the truth, lead to some kind of truth, and Islam has taught you more about your religion and things like that. It's like, well, Islam makes some specific claims that run counteractive to the Christian claim, and we both can't be right. We both can't be right. I'm not saying that there's not some things in the Quran that are true that aren't good, like giving alms to the poor and things like that. Muslims are charitable, at least, I haven't looked by the numbers or whatever, but I'll just give them the benefit of the doubt. I know the Quran or whatever does talk about those kinds of things. They talk about a lot of violent things and stuff too that I obviously don't agree with. But there's going to be some true things and good ethics in a lot of different religions that you may analyze here or there. But do they lead to the truth? The core tenets of Islam, they, again, the claims that we make about Jesus, they say that's not the case. They don't believe Jesus is God. They do believe he's born of a virgin. They believe that he's coming back again, but he's going to come back again to say that all the Christians got it wrong. And if both of you believe that Jesus is God, oh, you're in big trouble, man. You're going to hell for that. Like, what do you mean? He died on the cross for your sins. What? Of course not. So we can't be right. And if there's other religions that are leading you away from this fundamental truth, how can you say that these other religions are truth? So when you espouse things like that would lead people away from Christ, away from the centrality of Jesus, I just don't see how you can make an article talking about how this man is so Christian. Like, I know sometimes people talk about people who aren't saved and they like don't drink, they don't party, they don't swear, they don't like a bunch of other stuff, and they're just like, man, you might as well be a Christian, but you really do have to buy in to actually be one. The law is written on our hearts. There's a lot of people who can choose to do good. We all fall. When the Bible talks about David being a man after his own heart, I hear a lot of people bring up David when people talk about how bad Trump is. And I'm like, well, David wasn't perfect. No, David certainly wasn't perfect. Oh my gosh. David, my sister was going over, she loves the Old Testament, man. That's where she stays, man. She loves the book of Judges and has read so much about David and so on. But she was mad the other day about Uriah. She's like, oh my, he was one of his mighty men. This wasn't just some, dude who was in high authority. This is one of his ride or dies who he utterly betrayed. David did some garbage things, man. But at the same time, he's a man after God's own heart. Now, that doesn't mean that God is his heart is for these people who are just so troubled and are doing all this shady stuff. But David had a heart to do the things for God. There are particular things that David wanted to do for God. His heart was for God. He wasn't always obedient as far as living his life the right way. He definitely made some errors. But if your life isn't focused on doing the right things for God, I just don't see how you can be like, well, yeah, they're a real Christian people. This is a Christian X-ray. This guy over here who wanted Joe Biden to use federal lands to kill babies. That's the Christian X-ray we're all looking for. I don't like all the meme stuff that Trump does. I don't like all the stuff that's just like I don't know, a little too braggadocious, like with the immigration. I have mixed feelings about it. Like on one hand, I think, I don't know if it's good with deterrence. That's one thing, but I know it's because people don't want to be embarrassed, locked up and other stuff like that. But I sometimes they go too hard with the memes and the videos, and I've spoken out about certain specific ones before. So I don't love the way that the Trump administration does everything. I would love to have, a really good statesman who is who seems very kind and upright and good family values and all kinds of different, but I know that people treat those people also like garbage. That doesn't mean they shouldn't run. But Trump is very much someone who they deserve. I guess the media and the left, and he's very much a reap what you have sown kind of person. Because I heard that Donald Trump and was thinking about not even running again, doing a second term, which he did obviously win. But he decided to go all in once they raided Mar-a-Lago. But he was considering not doing it, just kind of staying in the background. So they could have left him alone, and they didn't do that. But Mitt Romney, who I didn't love, by the way, but they treated him very terribly. They treated McCain very terribly, which his daughter keeps bringing up when they try to reference him as like, oh, he was so much better than Trump and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I remember when you guys treated my dad like trash. I was there. I recall. So they didn't treat him well. They didn't treat Romney well. They liked that they lost. They liked that they lost. And that they opposed people like Trump, that's what they liked about him. But when they were running, they didn't treat them very well. If the left wanted to uplift someone who was not on the same side as them, they could have very well done that with Ron DeSantis. Family man, he's got those little kids. While Trump was getting locked up and taking his mugshot and all that stuff, he was at the Field of Dreams playing baseball with his kids. But what does the left do? They make some kind of hoax about him trying to say that slavery was a good thing or something. They do the "Don't Say Gay" bill. They're like, oh my God, they come out. There was that 60 Minutes feature about the Ron DeSantis in Publix, and they cut out a huge portion to make it seem like he said something different in his answer, which was just an egregious example. I have to, if you haven't seen it, you should go look it up. But they didn't treat him well. They didn't treat him well at all. If Marco Rubio is the next candidate for president, you think they're going to be nice and say, oh, well, Marco Rubio, he's an upright family guy who can quote the Bible and and articulate the gospel message very well, which he did at Charlie Kirk's memorial. But they're not going to be cool with that either. The reason why people like Talarico, the left likes Talarico, the media likes Talarico, all these atheists like Talarico, these ex-evangelicals like Talarico, is because they use Talarico to bash Christians, and that's what Talarico himself does. They push their evil ideology and they bash Christians. That's what they do. That's what they're going to use him for until November and maybe beyond. Because just because he fails in the Senate doesn't mean he won't run for governor. He won't do a Beto. So he may be sticking around for a while. And if he gets some kind of, I don't know, he could run for president. Not saying he'll win, but he's going to be around maybe for a minute. And if they see that it's successful in some kind of way, they'll push someone else who's like him. There's so many progressive Christians, quote unquote, self-identifying Christians, all over the place who could do the same shtick. But he is a radical. He is a radical. I was going to play this video of Talarico talking about abortion, but I think I might table it. I've referenced it a lot, but he was asked about Democrats and whether you can be pro-life and still be in the Democrat Party. And he brought up like, oh, we can at least work on other ways to mitigate abortion. And I'm like, how can you want to mitigate abortion? First of all, why do you want to do it? Why do you want to mitigate abortion? Why do you want there to be less abortions? If it's not a baby, why does there need to be less of them? If they're not human and alive, they're just a clump of cells, why does it matter that there are less abortions? Why? Like, why did we have the safe, legal, and rare? Why was that a thing? Why did that used to be the belief? Because it's killing babies, right? That even if they're very small, even if they're very undeveloped, by the time you may have an abortion, that they still have value, some kind of inherent value. And it's wrong. Like on the gut level, you know it. You know it. You may suppress the truth a lot, but you know it's wrong. Because again, why would you need to work together to try to have less abortions if it wasn't a bad thing? If it was just like removing a mole or something like that, if it's just removing a piece of a body or something like that, or just ending a pregnancy as if nothing other relevant thing is going on, what, you don't need there to be less. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. So obviously we know there's something evil going on. But I also don't believe that he wants there to be less abortions when he wanted Joe Biden, and he tweeted about it, and I don't have my tweets up. But he said that he wanted him to use federal lands to do abortions on the federal lands in red states. So even if your state got together and through the will of the people and its popular vote, and you're like, we're going to ban abortion, he still thinks that the federal government should say, no, we're still going to kill babies on this land. But he wants to appear as a moderate. I get it. We can't let him lie. We can't let him. You're not a good, decent Christian person when you go around lying to people, when you're trying to deceive people, when you're manipulating people. That's not good or Christian. Like, be for real who you are. Don't play these games with people. Just because you say things in a very nice, soft manner doesn't make you good or decent. Just because someone is loud. There are the really good preachers in this world who are loud and tuning all the time. And sometimes they may speak harsh words. You think holiness preachers who may not say everything the nicest kind of way, but if they're living right, that they're not Christian or somehow less decent? Anyway, that's his article. That's his article. Someone said, run his mouth about whiteness, yet took a seat from a black woman. Mm-hmm. Or is it this? Yep. How can no one notice the hypocrisy? I did. I did. Like, what's the point of talking about these racist institutional institutional racism and whiteness and the patriarchy and how they've suppressed everybody, blah blah blah. But you're gonna take a spot that a black woman could have had. Okay. By the way, it's fine. People should have choices. People voted for him rather than her. That's fine. That's fine. I'm just making fun of their ideology on the left. I love when people go on college campuses and there's a leftist who's like, oh, the more minorities, their things are so terrible from blah blah blah, and someone's like, well, you're at this nice university. Would you be willing to give up your spot for a minority? And they're like, no. Or if you ask someone about they say people should have reparations. Like, okay, well, give me some money. They're like, no. Like, it's like, okay, who do you think's going to pay for it? Who do you think's going to pay for reparations? We're not just going to confiscate it all from Elon Musk or something. Anyway, that's all for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Go to blacktunies.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost a stream on my site, all the good stuff. So you guys can support. I very much appreciate it and appreciate you guys. You guys can check out different merch that's available at the store as well, like different t-shirts, like I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For t-shirt, and we got mugs and so on. I do also have lots of books you guys can check out. I do have a link in the description that'll take you to some of my, to Bigger. That's where the link is. It'll take you to my book Bigger, my children's picture book. But I got all kinds of different stuff, like, of course, God is blatantly against abortion, because the Bible, not only are there particular scriptures that you can take to be like, oh yeah, abortion would be bad, and there's early church history, like a lot of people who try to take the progressive route with the Bible usually will act like there's no church history where abortion is referred to as murder, and you can find the 1st century, 2nd century, all that stuff. But also, if you are living a Christian life, if the world was living a Christian life, obviously you wouldn't have abortion be a problem. Like 80% of abortions, I think it's somewhere around the number. The numbers are in the book, but majority of abortions are from women who are, and I mean the vast majority of abortions are from women who aren't married, who are out here fornicating. If people were just doing the deed with their spouses, that would virtually get rid of them all. There's still married people who have abortions, and some of that may be just, maybe they have too many kids, maybe they weren't ready at the time, maybe somebody was dipping out, financial, there could be all kinds of reasons why they do it in the marriage, but usually it's women outside of marriage. But there's all kinds of ethics and values that are taught in the Bible. Like, if you're concerned about your financial burdens and you're like, oh, I'm going to have an abortion because of finances, does the Bible teach you to be anxious about those things? To put those things first to the point where you're here about to commit human sacrifice? Is that the right attitude to have? Or should you be trusting in Jesus? Should you be trusting that God will provide, or at least get you through what you're going through? Because the Bible certainly, by the way, doesn't teach you that you're supposed to go through life without any kind of suffering, that is what's supposed to happen in this life. Because a lot of people really have abortions because they believe that they're alleviating suffering for themselves or even the child. And that is not what you are supposed to be doing. He's enough to help you get through whatever you're going through. He's enough. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me, and I will see you on tomorrow. God bless.